This is the Jung Histocut 820 by Leica. Now this little microtome I tend to favor. It's, for me, a little easier to adjust. It's a little bit older and it's got a little bit of a heavier feel, not quite as smooth, but it gives you a lot more leeway on adjusting and playing with it. This is what we call the flywheel. This has a locking mechanism for safety. Over here we have the advance and retract wheel. So I want to move this chuck because I don't want to bring this chuck down onto this here. I can see it's too far forward from whoever used it last. So I'm going to turn it towards me and it's going to go back, as you can see. Now on this microtome there is a area that if you bring this chuck head all the way forward or all the way back, to get really nice sections, having this chuck head in more of the middle range, which I have it lined up already with this blade holder here. Let me show you. Over here there's a lever that you can push this down and you can remove the blade holder. Actually, the last person who used this from another lab actually kind of left some paraffin on here. We'll get that off while we have the blade holder off. Anyway, so if you bring this advance and retract wheel, so this is now at its furthest point. And now I want to see how far it goes to its furthest point forward. And I'm only telling you this for your information. I have it set up nicely for you guys, and that's its furthest point forward. So what I want to do is I want to find that halfway point, because if it's too far forward it's not going to give you good sections, and if it's too far back it's not going to give you good sections. Makes sense. So we'll put this in a middle range. Okay. Now when you loosen that side here, not only can you remove this, but you can also slide this from side to side. I don't use that feature much because I think it misaligns the blade and stuff enough that I just don't use that much. I'd rather move the blade itself, and I'll show you that later. So I'm going to get this nicely centered and then clamp it. Now you never want to do anything on this microtome, or any microtome for that matter, and most histology equipment is the same way. You never should need to crank anything really hard. A nice finger tightening and a little push is always enough. Cranking it really hard actually will cause you not to get good sections and actually can damage the machine. So we'll put this lever up and give it a little finger push, and that's good enough. This lever right here is for the blade holder itself. Now I have some blades that I use for facing the blocks. I saved them. They're old blades from when I'm getting my good quality sectioning, but they're still good enough and sharp enough for actually facing the block, and I'll discuss that in a minute. So to put the blade in, you're going to slide it in here. You release this lever, you slide the blade in, and you can put it down further or this way. I don't recommend you using your fingers. You can use forceps, so you can bring it down this way or this way. You just want to make sure that two things you want to make sure of. One is you don't want to touch your nice blade edge, so go from the sides, and you want to make sure it's nice and evenly seated when you're moving it. And the other thing is, well, don't touch this nice edge, because if you touch it, if it's a new blade and you touch it, you've pretty much created a knife line. So even when you wipe, if you want to wipe this off a little bit, wipe up, not down. So let me back this chuck off of the blade again. You never want this so far forward where you come down, you can really damage the blade holder itself. If you damage this, you'll never get good sections. If you bring this, if it's in the down position and you bring this up and you gouge this edge, you're gonna damage this. So if you ever have a doubt or you come to sit this microtome, get in the habit of backing it off no matter what. And that'll just save you a problem. Okay, some other things are, we have these two hex screws here, or Allen wrench screws, and we have a wrench here. Every once in a while, you're going to want to slightly turn these kind of evenly on this blade. That's if your sections aren't coming out very nicely, you'll want to do that. For the most part, you'll have it set the way you like and you'll leave it alone, and with occasionally you'll have to turn it. Just seeing how you make those minor adjustments as you're microtoming. This here is your blade tilt angle, and that's what this lever is for. And here's the tilt angles right here. I have it set at one that seems to work very nicely for this microtome. It looks to be at about 3. And I put a little line there, and I put a little line on the blade holder itself, and a little line on the bottom base of that, so that should be helpful in the future. Hopefully nobody will mess with that. You should never mess with it once it's set, so this lever you just leave alone. If somebody inadvertently does, it's marked. And again, it looks like it's set at about 3. Okay, moving right along. It's got a little paraffin buildup on this thing. That's why I wanted to stick. This is our micron adjustment on this microtome. It's a little knob here. And you turn this knob and adjust it. Right now we have it set at 4. Realistically, this microtome cuts best probably, you can probably get away with 2 or 3, but you'll be struggling with your ribbons. To get good ribbons, you can, probably about the lowest you can go is 3 on this particular microtome. Here's 4, then and now it's set at 5, and you just turn it. And it actually will go up to, looks like 50. Now, once you get past, say, 20 or 25, don't expect a ribbon. That thickness doesn't really ribbon. You get a little small curled section, usually. So you can use that for DNA or RNA studies, depending if you've RNA zapped everything. Okay. As you can see, I'm brushing this all off. I got this nice brush from Leica when we were at our convention. They provided these for this purpose. All right, moving right along, let's talk about facing the block. I have these sections here. Remember that one that I said was a problem, what wasn't acceptable, that one was embedded deeper than the other? I have that block, and I'll go ahead and demonstrate this particular one, exactly what I mean, why you don't want this to happen, because I'm going to cut this tissue over here way before I start cutting that one. And if you have really tiny samples, that's going to be critical. So we'll start with this one and take a look at how that looks. Also, we have Kim wipes, so you need to have those on hand, a light, and this is the water bath. The water bath I have set at a little, I actually cut and use the water bath at maybe 42 or 43, but I have marked it for 45. For brain tissue, you might use a much cooler water bath, say 37 to maybe 40. And then again, that depends on the tissue and how it's reacting. So I'm going to do what's called rough facing starting off. So I'll take one of my facing blades that I have in this box and put one in. Now I can use these sticks. You can get other sticks from around the lab. I happen to have these on hand. They're like little Q-tip sticks, but I use the untipped end. I always face my blocks the same way when I put it in the chuck. you want to make sure that this is locked in the locking mode, because you don't, as you're putting the block in, you don't want it to come down in your hand and cut your fingers. So I tend to face mine the same way. You can put them this way. You can put them this way. You can put it this way. I like mine for my personal thing. You'll have your habit that you'll do, always facing this way. Now, the reason it's important to kind of always want your block face the same way is because if you ever come back to this block, you're going to know that you almost always face it that way, or you always cut it that way. So when you come back to it, it should be nicely aligned with the microtome the next time you go to cut on this machine, because you're going to put it right in that same way. Now, if I come back to this block and I face it up and I have it up and down after I've faced it and cut it this way, it's going to be aligned differently, and I'm going to waste more tissue to face it again. So the other reason for having it faced always the same way is you're going to have always the same orientation when you're picking up your slides. And the third reason for having it always face the same way is, remember when you're embedding, I had talked about that little water droplet that sometimes gets at the end of the tissue. Well, if you know something like that, you may embed your tissue in a way that is going to help you avoid that and not damage your tissue, and maybe have that little water droplet at the end. And since you know you cut it facing that way, then you can embed and make your adjustments on the embedding end. Okay, this is what's called rough facing. So what I'm doing is I'm going to do a full turn and give the advance and retract wheel a little push forward again. So I can see I'm far away, so I'm going to bring this up a little further. Now I have this at 20, so I need to get that back to 4. We routinely cut at 4 in this lab, all our routine stuff. Now kidney tissue and other tissues, you might want to cut at 3. Okay, so I'm advancing. Now I can see that this is wanting to pick up a little bit. Now that may be one of two things. That could be that there's paraffin on the back of this blade, or somebody has adjusted my microtome a little bit, which there is. So we'll discard that old blade and we'll try and get another one here. And we'll see if this does better. Otherwise I have to make a slight adjustment to get it to ribbon. And in the facing mode, this is a good time to make your alignments and adjustments for your ribbon. Okay. So it's wanting to ribbon, but it's still not great. But you can see right now I'm into this tissue, and that tissue I haven't even got to yet. And I've faced quite deeply into the block so far. Let's try another part of the blade, see if that helps. I just want to see that it's aligned nicely to get a ribbon. Okay. So I'm going to actually put a new blade in because I can see it needs a little bit of alignment and adjustment. Now this microtome is actually very nice for aligning and adjusting it because it has an XY adjust on it that is quite easy to use. Let's see how it does with a new blade. Okay, so it seems pretty good. Just a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this lever down. I can see it's cutting on this side before it's cutting on that side, and it's causing the ribbon to kind of be cockeyed a little bit. So I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to adjust this way. And it turned the block face a little bit that way. So the block face is here, and it made it go this way a little bit. And also I can see it's still not giving me a nice ribbon, so I'm going to try and push this where the black face goes back a little bit and see if that helps me. So now it should be wanting to cut on the bottom and cut this side first, which it is. A little adjustment goes a long way with this microtome, and as you can see, now it's wanting to ribbon nicely. You should never have to do like a big turn on any of this. If you do, what's going to happen is you're going to have a real lopsided block. Your goal is to be able to look around the block, see that one side is not higher than the other, and look and see that this side is not, one side is not too much higher than the other. Now some microtomes actually work a little bit better if it's tilted, a little bit forward or a little bit back for the angle at which it's hitting the blade. For me, I can see that this microtome right now, I can see that it's cutting more at the top still than at the bottom. So I still may want to adjust it just that little bit more. But I also noticed that my paraffin, this block itself, was not embedded evenly. So I'm going to try a new block and see how it does with a different block that is embedded evenly. Okay, so we have this one. This was the testes block that we did earlier, an ENU testes block. Again, I always face it the same way, so I'm going to put the block in this way. You may have your block orientated a different way. That's your habit. I'm going to back it off the blade, and then I'm going to come in and see how it's cutting and see if it's evenly in the chuck. Now if you'll notice, some microtomes you can get away with, in fact this particular one you can get away with facing in a rocking motion. I don't recommend that as a good habit because this microtome over here, it actually damages it to do that rocking motion. It's not good for it. Whereas this one, you can get away with it. Okay, this is good for you to see. Now, when I put, this is a very nicely, evenly embedded block. I mean, there's no higher paraffin, and it's real even on the bottom. So when I'm turning this, I'm noticing it's getting this right corner, and it's not getting the top at all. So it's getting the bottom and the right corner. So that means I have quite a little bit of adjustments here. So what I want to do is I want to turn it this way a little bit, and I want to bring it forward a little bit. So I'm going to release this, and I'm going to turn this, and I'm going to turn this to make the block face come forward a little bit. Okay. When you're microtoming, this should all be adjusted and set up nicely. You shouldn't have to keep doing that. You may be a little slight adjustment here and there, but you really shouldn't have to mess with that as much as I'm having to now. But other people have been in our lab and used this microtome and have really turned those, and they're quite a bit off now. So and maybe that's good for you to see what you need to do. Another thing about this one is it seems to have a little bit of play this way, so you might want to like tilt it and make sure it's coming down even when it comes down. Let's see what happens now. Okay, so it's pretty even that way. Let's see how it cuts and gives me a ribbon. If we hear a little bit of squeaking, that means it's the tilt forward or backward is a little bit off, because you really don't want it to be squeaking. Okay. So it's not giving me a good ribbon yet. And let me see what we got going here. Okay, so it looks like it still needs to come forward a little bit more. See if it's even on the bottom with the blade. See how it likes that. Once it starts going really nice, trying to give me a ribbon. All right, so now this may be where we've also got another problem, and that was where I told you about slightly tightening something. Somebody may have cranked this tighter, or a little bit loose. Let's see how that works. If that makes a difference. Okay, so it's starting to give me my nice ribbon. Still a little bit off. And that's why when other people use the equipment, you want to have them not adjust things too much. And let's move this blade over to a fresh part and see what we got going on. Okay. Let me see. All right, let's put it back a little bit. So now I need to put it back a little bit because it's not wanting the ribbon with it facing forward. So let's see if it likes it better going back. Back it off the blade a little and see if that helps us. And that's better. Now we got it. Okay. Still not as smooth as I would like to see it. Not just yet. But we're getting our nice ribbon. Okay. So this block I can see is a little bit dry. That's why we got the hole there going on. So we'll soak that. Let me check its alignment. No side is higher than the other. This side looks a little tiniest bit lower than that side. And this looks like it's a little with an acceptable, possibly acceptable range, a little bit lower than that side, and we'll see what happens when we chill it, what final adjustment we ultimately have to make. I can see now that I've got all the sections, so this one's a nicely faced block. If you catch the light a little bit, you can see that I've gotten both, all four of the testes, and I've gotten a full epididymis there. So that block is nicely faced. Even though we were making our adjustments, so we were kind of facing it at the same time. I'm going to actually put some water. I have a dish of crushed ice here. I'm going to put some water because I want this tissue to be soaking while I'm facing the other blocks. And I use RO water, and I use RO water in the water bath. Never use tap water. Okay, here's another testes block that we'll face, and it again looks nice and even. Let's see where we're at. Since we're still getting our microtome back adjusted. Okay, which that makes sense because when I looked at the block, I saw that that side, when I looked at this last block, I saw that this side was a little bit lower than that side. So that makes sense, and that's exactly what's happening here. The left side is cutting first, which is what I saw in that block. So I'll make that little adjustment. And that should have corrected it, and it did. And I also saw that this block was now cutting the bottom a little bit quicker, and that's what I'm seeing here. So I'm going to tilt it just a little, this tiny bit forward. Because I still want to get my nice ribbon. And we'll see if that gives me a good ribbon. And it's actually giving me a very nice ribbon. Now another thing is about these microtomes, your stroke is hugely important. If I go like this, and am all over the map and I don't have a ribbon, a good rhythm, it's not going to give me a good ribbon. If I'm going like this, it's not going to give me a good ribbon. It's the, you gotta have rhythm. So if you notice, you can even play music and have the beat of the music when you're cutting. A lot of times for beginning microtomists, that helps a lot, having some beat to microtome to, and have that nice flow and get your ribbon. So this ribbon is a little bit weak to me. It still kind of wants to fall apart. So at some point I'm going to find a range where it's doing a little better than what it's doing. So remember I told you about having paraffin on the edges of the block? Well, now I also see that there's a little paraffin buildup here that's going to interfere with the cutting later, so it'll change the angle of that block, that little bit of paraffin. Okay. I think that's pretty acceptable ribbon that it's giving me. Now that that little thing of paraffin is gone, maybe that's helping it. Okay. And I might have a couple more adjustments before I'm done. Yeah, I do. Let's try a little bit more. Okay, that's much better. And it's probably starting to get some paraffin buildup because this was not a chilled block. Now a chilled block is going to give you a much better ribbon than an unchilled one. And that's nice and straight, and it's starting to get some paraffin buildup, but that's acceptable. Okay, moving right along. I'm looking at this block face. I see a full epididymis coming through, and I see the full testes, longitudinal, and cross section. Let's try this other little one here. Let's face this one. This is a kidney block. Another one. I'm backing the chuck off the blade, and I'm coming forward just a little, and now I'm starting to, this is what's called rough facing. When you push with the advance and retract wheel, and then you come forward, so you're pushing up. Now what you don't want to do is you don't want to come up so thick on it, like a big thick thing like this. You don't want to do that because you're rough gouging your tissue. So don't do that. You want to come up just smoothly. You know, it's probably about 10 or 12 microns at a time. If you're worried about the advance and retract and doing this facing thing, what you can do is temporarily put this at 20 microns and face your stuff that way. You can hear the sound difference at a higher micron level. It would be a reminder to you that you have it thick, so you need to turn it back when you're doing your actual cutting. So you can rough face that way instead of my way with the, and then turn it back to your 4 or 5 microns later. Okay, now I'm going, so we did the rough facing, now I'm doing the smooth facing. I'm back at the 4 microns and I'm getting the smooth, getting that initial few sections smooth again. Okay, now I've got both pieces of kidney all the way around, so none is deeper than the other, so that's a nicely faced block. It's better to, now if you have precious tissue, it's probably better to slightly underface than overdo it. You can always go back to it if you need to, if it's precious tissue. But you can't go back to it if you've overdone it, which makes sense. Okay, let's find another block here, and then we'll go on to cutting and show you how to do actual sectioning. We'll do another kidney. Now this was a sagittal kidney, or longitudinal, same thing. Okay, let's see how it's cutting evenly with the microtome. Very nice and even on this block. And let's see if it gives us a nice ribbon here in a minute. I'm rough facing it just to get into the full amount of the tissue, get through that initial paraffin. Now I'm going to smooth face it, and while I'm smooth facing it, I can see if it's giving me a ribbon, if I need to make any adjustments. It's giving me a ribbon even though it's a warm black, not chilled, so I'm satisfied with that at the moment. Okay, and it's another nicely faced block.